am Velma, and I am 52 years old. I have learned that sometimes the silence on Thanksgiving speaks louder than the noise of a feast. But this year, that silence came with a plain white envelope. Inside was not an invitation, but a mortgage statement for $35,000 for my childhood home. The very home my brother told me was sold 5 years ago. Before I share this entire story of the unexpected bill and how it led to a Saturday morning when a moving truck pulled into my old driveway, I want to ask where you are listening from. If you are in a place where family means everything, or perhaps where it means something far more complicated, let me know by leaving a like and subscribing to this journey. It might just make you think about what you truly own. My life for the past 15 years has been one of quiet order. I live in a small town about 3 hours from where I grew up in an apartment that is neat as a pin. I am a civil engineer. I design roads and bridges, which I suppose is a profession built on creating connections, a bit of an irony I have learned to live with. My world is one of precise calculations of concrete and rebar of things that hold fast under pressure. My personal life mirrored that. It was predictable, quiet. I had my books, my small balcony herb garden, and the deep satisfaction of a job done well. I had built a peaceful life brick by careful brick after the ground had shifted under me years before. My childhood home was a different world. A rambling old farmhouse on 2 acres at the edge of our small town. My father, Frank, was a carpenter with rough hands and a gentle soul for wood and soil. He was the one who taught me to tell clay from loam just by feeling it, who showed me how the light hit the back field in the late afternoon, turning it to gold. He called it good, honest earth. My mother, Eleanor, was a homemaker whose world revolved around keeping things pleasant. And then there was Gary, my older brother by 3 years. Gary was the golden boy, charming, sociable, destined for a desk job in a suit. He and my mother understood each other, spoke the same language of social expectations and appearances. I was the quiet one, the observer trailing after my dad in my muddy boots. Dad always said I had a feel for the land. I think Gary heard that as favoritism. A seed was planted, then I see now. The first real earthquake was Dad's death. A sudden stroke 10 years ago. It left Mom adrift, and she clung to Gary and his wife Diane like a life raft. Diane was all sharp smiles and perfectly coordinated decor. She took over. I was struggling then, trying to prove myself in a male-dominated field in a new city. And my visits became infrequent weekends filled with a tense, polite distance. I felt like a guest in my own home. When Mom passed 6 years back, Gary handled everything. He called me his voice crisp and efficient. We need to settle the estate, Velma. For Mom's peace. The market is good. We have a solid offer on the old place. I was grief-stricken and guilty for not being there more. The thought of the house full of memories of both my parents being sold to strangers was a physical ache. But Gary made it sound like the only sensible adult thing to do. "It's just a house, sis. The memories are in here," he'd said, and I could almost hear him tapping his temple. A packet of papers arrived. I was in the middle of a critical project deadline. The legalese swam before my eyes. It looked official. It talked about property disposition and beneficiary agreement. At the very end, a line about receiving a disbursement. Gary had said signing would allow the sale to proceed, and I'd get my fair share. Trusting my brother, I signed where the sticky notes indicated and mailed it back. A few weeks later, a check for $15,000 arrived. "Your portion from the sale," the note from Gary read. It felt like blood money. I cashed it, paid off my student loans, and tried to close that chapter. The invitations for Thanksgiving. The first year or two after Mom died still came, though they felt obligatory. Then they started to include excuses. "The kids have so many activities that weekend. We're keeping it really small this year. Last year, a generic Happy Thanksgiving text. This year, nothing. Just that vast, echoing silence. Then the white envelope came. From a mortgage company I'd never heard of. My first thought was a scam. I almost shredded it, but something made me open it. The words, payment due, and the amount $35,000 made my breath catch. Then I saw the property address. It was the old house, and under borrowers, it listed Gary and Diane, but in a box labeled Additional Interested Party, it had my name, Velma A. Simmons. The peaceful life I had built, that careful structure of calm, developed a hairline crack right down the middle. This was no mistake. This was a door swinging open on a room I had tried to lock forever. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, the paper cold and heavy in my hands. The silence in my apartment was no longer peaceful. It was accusatory. I called the number on the statement. After navigating the automated system, a polite woman named Sandra answered. I gave her the loan number. Yes, Ms. Simmons, I see the file. This is a home equity line of credit taken out 3 years ago by Gary and Diane Simmons, secured by the property at, and she read my childhood address. But I don't own that property. I said, my voice tighter than I intended. Well, Sandra said carefully, her keyboard clacking. Our title work shows a complexity. The structure is titled to them, but there's an easement and ownership note regarding the underlying land parcel. Your name is on that underlying title. It creates a clouds on the title situation. The loan was approved with the understanding they would resolve it, but it's still pending. A clouds on the title. My father's good, honest earth was now a clouded title. I thanked Sandra and hung up my heart, pounding a dull rhythm against my ribs. My first call to Gary was a masterpiece of deflection. Velma, hey. His voice was all warmth, then turned concerned. What's up? You never call. I went straight to it. I got a mortgage statement for the house, Gary, for $35,000. A beat of silence, then a forced chuckle. Oh, that. Geez, that's some clerical error. They must have pulled an old mailing list. Don't worry about it. Toss it. It has my name on it, Gary, as an interested party. Another pause. I could hear the change in his breathing. Look, it's complicated with these banks. When we did the refi to build the new garage apartment, they had to list all previous owners. It's a formality. It doesn't mean anything. Refi, you refinanced the house. You said you sold it. I said we settled the estate. He corrected, his voice turning harder. We bought out your share. We live here. We've invested here. That garage apartment is for Diane's mother, for heaven's sake. It's a family place. We're honoring Mom and Dad's memory, not like some people who just took the money and ran. The words were a slap. I took a shaky breath. I need to understand, Gary. What exactly did I sign? It was a quitclaim, Velma. You quitclaimed your interest in the house to us, for your share of the equity. It's done. Now I'm busy. The line went dead. A quitclaim deed. I knew enough to know that was a device to release whatever interest you might have in a property. Not a sale agreement, not a transfer from a known owner. A release. I called Diane next. Her voice was syrup and sorrow. Oh, Velma, honey, we didn't want to bother you with all this. You have your own life so far away. We just needed a little space for Mom. The loan was the only way. Gary was too proud to ask you for help. We thought it was all settled from before. We would never want to upset you. The manipulation was so thick I could taste it. The kindly sister-in-law, the proud brother, the distant, troublesome Velma. I felt a cold anger beginning to crystallize, cutting through the confusion and hurt. The next morning, I called in sick. I loaded a thermos of coffee, my digital voice recorder, and a notepad into my car. I drove the 3 hours back to my hometown, not to the house, but to the county recorder's office. The clerk, a young man with kind eyes named Ben, saw my distress. You're looking for the chain of title for the old Simmons place on Ridge Road, he asked. I nodded, unable to speak. He guided me to a public terminal and showed me how to search. The first document that flashed on the screen was the deed. Grantor Frank W. Simmons. Grantee Frank W. Simmons and Eleanor J. Simmons as joint tenants. Dated decades ago. My throat tightened. Search for transfers after their deaths, Ben said softly. I did. Nothing for Frank. For Eleanor, there was a document filed 6 years ago. A ladybird deed transferring the house to Gary upon her death. So the house went to Gary. But the land? Try searching just the land parcel number separate from the structure. Ben suggested, his finger tracing the screen. Sometimes with older rural properties, they were split for tax purposes way back when. A new search. And there it was. The land deed. Still in Frank Simmons's name. No transfer of title after his death. No probate had ever been filed for his interest in the land, because it had been overlooked or because someone had hoped it would be forgotten. Then I found the will. The one filed with the county. It was simple. It left everything equally to my children, Gary and Velma. Everything. The house and the land. But filed right beside it was another document. The quitclaim deed I had signed. It relinquished all my right title and interest in the property described as the residential dwelling and appurtenant structures located at. It was specifically cleverly worded to cover the building, not the land. Gary and Diane had later filed a separation of title, creating a new deed for the house alone which they owned. They had essentially tried to sever the house from the earth it sat on. And the earth, the 2 acres of good, honest soil, was still legally owned by my deceased father, and therefore was an unsettled estate asset belonging to his heirs. To Gary and to me. I paid for the copies. My hands were steady as I took them from Ben. I walked to my car, sat in the driver's seat, and placed the warm stack of papers on the passenger side. I stared at the familiar oak tree in the courthouse square. The cold, clear truth settled over me. They hadn't just excluded me from Thanksgiving. They had tried to erase me from the legacy. They had taken the house and tried to steal the land, and then had the audacity to borrow against it all. And they had sent me the bill. The hurt was still there, a deep old ache, but it was now encased in something stronger, a resolute, icy clarity. This was not over. I drove to Ridge Road. I didn't park in the driveway. I parked on the street a little way down like a stranger. The house was almost unrecognizable. It had been painted a trendy gray with white trim. The sprawling front porch was gone, replaced by a sleek stamped concrete patio. And where the old leaning 2-car garage used to be, stood a massive structure, a 3-car garage with an apartment above it complete with fancy dormer windows. The garage apartment for Diane's mother. It looked expensive. I walked up the driveway. My heart was a hammer, but my mind was quiet. I rang the doorbell, a new electronic chime. Diane answered. Her smile of welcome froze, then shattered into a mosaic of surprise, irritation, and forced cheer. Velma! What a surprise, Gary! Your sister is here! Gary appeared behind her, wiping his hands on a dish towel. His face went through a similar transformation. What are you doing here? He asked, his voice flat. We need to talk, I said, holding up the manila folder. About the land. The word land did it. His eyes flickered. Come in, he said tersely. The inside was all Diane, farmhouse chic, sterile, and photo-ready. We stood in the living room. I didn't sit. What's this about Velma? Gary started crossing his arms. If this is about that stupid bill again, it's about the quitclaim deed I signed, and the will of Frank Simmons, and the land deed that never transferred out of his name. I spoke calmly, pulling out the copies. I handed him the county's record of the land title. He glanced at it, his face reddening. This is nonsense. Ancient history. The lawyer handled all this. Which lawyer, Gary? Because the county has no record of a probate for Dad's estate. The land is still his, and his will leaves it to both of us. Diane made a small, distressed sound. This is so upsetting. After all we've done here, maintaining everything, paying the taxes. You've been paying the taxes on the house, I corrected. The land taxes have been paid by an account in Dad's name, auto-drafted from an old bank account I just discovered. It's been slowly draining. You let me sign away my rights to the building, but you knew the land was a problem, didn't you? You hoped I'd never find out. Gary slammed the papers down on a pristine coffee table. You have no idea what you're talking about. You were never here. You didn't lift a finger when Mom was sick. Dad always babied you with your feel for the land. He'd have given it all to you if he could. We just took what was fair. We built a life here. So you admit you knew the land was separate. You admit you knew the will gave us both a claim. And you tricked me into signing away my claim to the house so you could have it all. My voice didn't waver. And then you took out a loan against it. A loan you now want me to help pay for. It's not tricking. Diane cried, tears now flowing, but her eyes were hard. We offered you money. You took it. That was the deal. And $35,000 is nothing compared to the value we've added. You should be grateful we included you at all. The mask was fully off. The entitlement, the venom it filled the tastefully decorated room. Grateful. They saw my inheritance as a gift they had bestowed upon me. I looked at my brother, this stranger I had shared a childhood with. The golden boy was now just a man fueled by greed and resentment. You don't get to decide what's fair, Gary. Dad already did, in his will. You don't get to decide my gratitude for being cheated. I gathered my papers. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to inform you. I am a legal owner of that land. You have a structure built on it without clear title. You have a mortgage based on faulty collateral. You need to resolve this, but you won't be resolving it with me at the kitchen table. I turned and walked out. I heard Diane's shrill voice behind me. After all we've done for this family, I didn't look back. Driving away, the cold anger settled into a firm, unshakable resolve. This wasn't about family drama anymore. It was a property dispute, a legal and financial mess. And for the first time, I held all the leverage. The good, honest earth was finally on my side. The drive home was a blur of taillights and my own swirling thoughts. The confrontation had drained the adrenaline, leaving behind a deep, weary sadness. But beneath the sadness, like bedrock, was that new resolve. I would not be emotional. I would be strategic. The first thing I did after a night of fitful sleep was to not call a friend. The shame was still too potent. Instead, I sat at my computer and searched for the name I remembered my father mentioning in his rare, serious moments, Henderson. Lawrence Henderson. He and Dad had been friends since childhood. He was a lawyer, semi-retired now. I found a number for his home office. Calling him felt like reaching back through time. His voice when he answered was old and dry like autumn leaves. Mr. Henderson, this is Velma Simmons, Frank's daughter. A long pause. Velma? Little Velma. I wondered if I'd ever hear from you. There was no surprise in his voice, only a deep, weary knowing. We met the next day at his small book-lined office. He was frail, but his eyes were sharp. He listened as I laid out everything, the mortgage bill, the county records, the confrontation. When I finished, he sighed, a sound of immense sorrow. Your father was a good man. A simple man, but he saw people clearly. He was worried about this. Worried Gary saw the property as a prize, not a home. Worried about Diane's ambitions. He unlocked a drawer in his ancient desk and pulled out a sealed envelope yellowed with age. On the front, in my father's unmistakable block print, it read, For Velma, to be opened by L. Henderson if things go sideways. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a newer will dated just a month before his stroke. It was handwritten, but witnessed. It left the house to Gary with the stipulation he provide a home for Eleanor for her life. And it left the land, specifically the 2-acre parcel identified by its survey number, to me. For my daughter Velma, it read, who understands that what comes from the earth must be cared for, not just owned. Below it was a note. Larry, if Gary tries to cut Velma out of the land, use this. He'll have the roof. She'll have the ground. That should tell him all he needs to know about where real value lies. I cried then. Deep, shuddering sobs that came from a place I had locked away for years. My father had seen it all coming. He had tried to protect me. Mr. Henderson patted my hand. This holographic will, it's valid in our state, but it was never filed. Frank wanted to avoid a fight while he was alive. After he died, your mother was so fragile. Gary convinced her the filed will was the only one. I was just the old family friend. I kept my promise to Frank. He gave me the name of a real estate attorney he trusted, Gloria Walsh. She's a shark, he said, a ghost of a smile on his lips. But she's an honest shark. She'll know what to do. Gloria was a woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense demeanor and eyes that missed nothing. I showed her both wills, the deeds, the mortgage statement. She whistled low. This is a beautiful mess. Legally, the filed will controls the estate, so you and your brother are joint owners of the land. But this later will shows clear intent and strengthens your moral and negotiating position immensely. Their separation of title for the house is shaky at best because they didn't have clear title to the land to begin with. The bank is going to have a heart attack. We devised a plan. Gloria would send formal letters to Gary and Diane and to their mortgage lender stating my claim as a legal owner of the underlying land and notifying them of the title defect. We would not make an offer. We would put them on notice. Then we would offer them two options as a courtesy. Option A, they could buy my half of the land from me at fair market value, as determined by an independent appraiser. Option B, I would buy their half from them at the same price. If neither could afford it or agree, the only remedy for a deadlock between joint owners was a partition action. The court would order the land sold and the proceeds split. I knew which option I wanted. I didn't want their money. I didn't want to own part of the land beneath their feet. I wanted a clean break. Option B, I told Gloria, but I don't want to buy them out. I want to force the sale, all of it. I want the land sold to someone else. Gloria nodded, understanding. Partition sale it is. It'll take some months, but we'll get there. They'll have the right to bid on it too, of course. The letters went out. The silence from my brother was louder than any scream. But the call from the bank came quickly to Gloria. They were deeply concerned. Their collateral was in banking terms compromised. I felt a strange power. Not a vengeful one, but the power of truth of the law of my father's quiet wisdom, finally having its say. I was no longer the little sister begging for a seat at the table. I was the ground beneath the table. And I had just remembered I could shift. The fallout was both chaotic and predictable. Gary's first response through his own lawyer was a blustering threat to sue me for emotional distress and fraudulent interference. Gloria's response was a single derisive paragraph that essentially said, "Try it." Then came the desperate phase. Gary called me directly, his voice stripped of its usual confidence, replaced by a wheedling panic. "Velma, you can't do this. This is our home. Where will we go? We have the kids' college to think about. You should have thought about that before you borrowed $35,000 against a house you didn't fully own," I said, my voice calm. "And before you tried to steal my inheritance." "We didn't steal. It was an oversight." "The oversight was yours," I said quietly. "You forgot I still owned the land under your garage." I hung up. Diane sent pleading emails full of religious appeals and family guilt. I didn't answer. Meanwhile, Gloria initiated the partition action. The court appointed a referee to oversee the sale of the land. An appraiser valued the 2-acre parcel considering its unique situation with an existing house and garage on it. The value was substantial. The land, with its development potential and despite the legal cloud, was worth more than the house sitting on it. The property was listed. The listing description was a masterpiece of understated legal intrigue. Unique opportunity prime 2-acre parcel. Subject to existing structures and ongoing partition action. buyer to conduct own due diligence. It attracted a strange mix of speculators and oddly brave souls. That's how we met the Millers, Jake and Mara Miller. They were in their early 30s, expecting their first child. They were architects who dreamed of building a sustainable, modern small home. They saw the listing and were intrigued, not deterred by the challenge. They did their homework, understood the partition action, and saw the potential. They wanted the land, and they had a vision that didn't involve the existing gray farmhouse or the oversized garage. They made a clean cash offer. The referee accepted it. The sale was set. As part of the proceedings, the new owners would gain full title to the land. They would then have the legal right to deal with the structures trespassing on their property. The morning of the closing and the day the Millers planned to take possession, I drove down. Gloria had advised me it was my right to be there. I parked down the street again. I needed to see it, not for spite, but for closure. At 9 a.m., a pickup truck with a demolition company logo on the door pulled up. A few minutes later, a moving van arrived, then a modest sedan. Jake and Mara Miller got out. Mara had a noticeable baby bump. Jake carried a folded survey map. They walked up to the front door and knocked. Gary answered. Even from my distance, I saw his posture stiffen. Diane appeared behind him, clutching a robe around her. There was a conversation. I saw Jake Miller gesture with the map pointing to the garage, then to the papers in his hand. I saw Gary's shoulders slump. I saw Diane's hand fly to her mouth. Jake's demeanor was calm, firm. He was not arguing. He was stating facts. He was the new owner of the land. He presented the deed. Then he pointed directly at the large, fancy garage apartment. I could read his lips. He said, "You have 30 days. Gary took a step forward, his face contorted in rage, but Jake stood his ground, a young man protecting his family's future. Mara placed a hand on her belly, a gesture both protective and serene. Diane began to cry, not the manipulative tears from before, but the ragged, hopeless sobs of true loss. They stood there on their fancy patio on my father's land and watched as the new owner pointed at the symbol of their overreach, the garage built with borrowed money on stolen ground. They were speechless. They had taken the house, taken the inheritance, taken their version of family, and now they were watching the foundation of it all be claimed by someone else. The Millers turned and walked back to their car. They saw me standing by my vehicle and approached. "You must be Velma?" Mara said, her smile warm and genuine. "Thank you for sticking to your principles. We promise to take good care of this place." Jake shook my hand. "We're going to build something honest here," he said. I believed him. I drove away before the demolition crew started their work. I didn't need to see the garage come down. Knowing it would was enough. The justice was not in the destruction, but in the transfer. From greed to hope. From deceit to a fresh start. The legal and financial dominoes fell with a steady, inevitable rhythm after that. With the land sold and the title cleared, the bank's position became untenable. The collateral for Gary and Diane's home equity loan was now owned by a third party who had no obligation to them. The bank called the loan due. The entire amount. Gary and Diane, unable to refinance with the now glaring title issue and likely facing a lawsuit from the Millers over the encroaching garage, had only one option: sell the house to pay off the bank and hopefully have something left. They sold quickly at a loss to a young family who had no connection to our history. The gray farmhouse changed hands again. I heard through the brittle grapevine of our hometown that they moved to a condo in a neighboring town. Diane's mother never got to live in the garage apartment. The apartment itself was dismantled by the Millers, the materials repurposed or recycled for their new build. My share of the proceeds from the land sale was life-changing, not in a flashy way, but in a profound one. It meant security. I paid off my mortgage. I met with a financial advisor and set up a conservative retirement plan. The weight of financial uncertainty I hadn't even fully acknowledged lifted. But the most important thing I did with the money felt like giving my father's voice back. I set up a small perpetual scholarship fund at the local technical college in his name, the Frank Simmons Memorial Scholarship for Women in Skilled Trades. It would help one woman each year study engineering technology, carpentry, or surveying. It honored his hands, his craft, and his belief in me. It turned the soil of that inheritance into something that could grow futures for others. I changed my phone number. I did not provide the new one to anyone who might give it to Gary. The last tie was not just cut, it was respectfully buried. That first Christmas alone was different. I wasn't waiting for a call that wouldn't come. I wasn't nursing a quiet hurt. I made myself a lovely meal, listened to music, and felt a deep sense of peace. The silence was mine now, chosen, and full of my own content. I realized that family is not a debt you owe, nor a club you must beg entry to. It is a mutual recognition of respect and love. In the absence of that, you are not losing family. You are simply acknowledging a truth, and that truth can set you free to build a different, more authentic life. I had built bridges for a living. Now I had finally learned to build a boundary. And boundaries, I discovered, are not walls to keep life out. They are the supports that allow you to build a stable home within yourself. It has been a year now. The sharp edges of the experience have softened, worn smooth by time and the steady rhythm of my days. I still live in my neat apartment, but I go out more. I joined a hiking group. The women are loud and funny and ask nothing of me but companionship on a trail. It is enough. Last week, a card arrived in the mail. It was a photograph of a beautiful, simple wooden frame house, almost complete, nestled among young trees. The sunlight dappled its siding. On the back, it read, "The Miller Homestead. Our daughter was born in the temporary cabin on site. She took her first steps on this good earth. Thank you for helping us find our place. With gratitude, Jake Mara and little Sylvie." I put the photo on my refrigerator. It didn't hurt to look at it. It felt like a circle closing properly. A correction. The lessons from all this are not about winning or losing. They are quieter, deeper. I learned that grief and betrayal can be layers in the same soil. You have to sift through both to find what's true and solid beneath. I learned that the most powerful action is often not a loud reaction, but a quiet, steady movement towards the truth, armed with facts and a clear heart. I learned that forgiving yourself for being trusting is more important than obsessing over others for being deceitful. My trust was not a flaw. Their deception was. And I learned that your true inheritance is rarely a thing. It is a set of values. My father left me his integrity, his connection to the earth, his quiet strength. No one could ever file a quitclaim deed on those. I carry them with me. I look at the simple band on my right hand, my mother's wedding ring. It's not gold or platinum. It's a humble metal worn smooth. It reminds me that value isn't about sparkle or cost. It's about what lasts, what feels true against your skin, what you can look at every day and see the real story in. So I will leave you with this question as we all navigate our own families and histories and the things we think we own. What is the piece of solid ground you are standing on in your life right now? Is it truly yours? And what might you need to gently, firmly reclaim so that you can build something honest and peaceful upon it? If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own foundations, I would be so grateful if you would share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me, what does family mean to you now? Your stories matter. And if you want to join me for more conversations about finding peace after life's earthquakes, please hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you for listening truly, and may you find or build a home that honors the very best parts of who you are.